We continue our discussion of the book Men Don't Like Kids with ugly fact number 3, which is people do not change other people. Let me say that again. People do not change other people. Now, this is my favorite chapter in the book because people waste lifetimes, spend lifetimes hoping, dreaming, and scheming about changing the behavior of some other adult. And despite our hopes, our dreams, our longings, our needs, our expectations, people do not, by and large, change other people. Now, of course, like I always say, there's an exception to every rule. Not just everything I say, but there's an exception to every rule. But statistically, one person is not going to permanently change another person. So the chapter has 3 takeaways, like every other chapter in the book. Number 1, people do what they do to gain pleasure and to avoid pain, period. People change when they decide to change, and the process of behavior change is predictable yet challenging. Whew. So, people do what they do to gain reward and avoid pain. And so, there are often situations where it appears that we are able to change other people because we provide a reward that they will work for a period of time. And so then we think, oh, I have achieved what I set out to achieve, which was to get this person to change in this particular way. But like we know from research, is that people tend to behave in long-standing patterns of behavior that they have learned in early childhood. And that while behavior can change temporarily to get a reward, the likelihood that that temporary change is going to be permanent is very limited. This is part of the reason why we say when we first meet someone, we're meeting their representative. Because when we first meet someone, very often a person is motivated to behave in a certain way to get whatever reward that you have to offer them. And so they change for that, or they engage in new behavior. I'm not going to even say they change. They engage in new behavior to get their reward. And then they go back to their long-standing behavior once they've either gotten the reward or the reward doesn't mean as much to them as it did. Okay? So that is why it is a good practice to hold off making any assessments or drawing any conclusions, rather, about someone's behavior until you've known them a while, and especially until you have seen them in a challenging situation, because it is challenging situations that bring out an exaggeration of who the person really is. It brings to the surface whatever long-standing patterns of behavior that the person has developed, typically from childhood. So, while it is possible to get people to do new things if given the appropriate reward or whatever they think is rewarding, it is almost impossible to permanently change the long-standing behavior patterns that adults come into new situations already having. Now, the good thing about understanding that adults typically respond based on their long-standing behavior patterns is that when you meet another adult and they're behaving in a particular way, you can be certain that more than likely their behavior towards you doesn't have a lot to do with you in most cases. And so that a person is going to bring with them whatever their long-standing behavior pattern is. And so when you encounter somebody, especially if the encounter is negative in the beginning or somehow challenging or crunchy, as I like to say, that very often that behavior is consistent with that person's long-standing behavior. Likewise, if you come into a new situation with somebody new, and they are responding to you in a positive way, that is very often because of who they already are. And then if you are also bringing with you some rewards as such in being in the new situation that the person is encountering, then that person will start by doing what they normally do, okay, to see if they can get the reward that you offer. And then they may do some new behavior if necessary to get the reward. But you will quickly see if the person is acting out of their long-standing behavior pattern or the offer of reward, because eventually whatever you're offering as a reward is going to lose its luster. And as I said, if you can see that person, observe that person in a challenging situation, then you will again be able to see who they really are and who they really were when you first encountered them, even if they were behaving differently. So the chapter talks about how behavior change occurs, much like behavior change in the addiction treatment process. Behavior change in a non-addiction treatment process is very similar. And so typically behavior change is going to be slow and painful and very deliberate. And that is why people have to be engaged in the behavior change process of their own volition, because they want to, because it is so painful that they're typically not going to do it for someone else. Even if they say, hey, I'm going to do this for you, it is usually because they have made up in their own mind that they're going to do it. And they certainly have to walk through that process as an individual. You can be supportive, a person can be supportive of someone else changing, but they cannot be the motivating factor or the push and pull to get someone to change. That person has to decide that they want to change on their own, and then they have to go through the process of change.